Hey everybody, it's Dan Sfera, www.theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Once again, that website address is www.theclinicaltrialsguru.com. We had a good interview today with guest guru Sarah Siegler, who's a friend of the show. And the interview kind of branched off into all different types of directions. And one of the places that I promised to get back to was the difference between an academic research clinic and a private, maybe physician-run or doctor-run research facility. So what are the difference between these two? So basically those are your only two options in the United States and probably anywhere in the world. If you want to do a clinical trial, you'll either do it at some kind of academic institution or at a private research facility. I'm going to just kind of briefly go through some of the differences and some of the similarities between the two. Number one, academic institutions are usually universities or nonprofit organizations that conduct clinical trials. They usually get a large amount of their funding from the federal government. So because of that, they are able to focus sometimes on rare medical conditions and hopefully finding treatments for those rare medical conditions. Now, the private, usually smaller research clinics that are usually run by one or two physicians, they get the majority of their funding from the pharmaceutical industry. So let's say Pfizer is doing a study for arthritis, they'll probably grant that about 80% of the trials to the for-profit sites, and then the other 20% they'll probably give some to some of the academic institutions. So very often times you'll have the same clinical trial being conducted at both academic institutions and the for-profit institutions. And the reasons are the patient population at each clinic may be different. At the academic institutions you may have people who walk in, people who call in asking about studies. They usually have a larger amount of people calling in or foot traffic just because of their name. They're a brand. And the smaller research clinics, they rely on either community outreach people to recruit study participants for them, like Don, or they rely on their doctors to enroll some of their own patients from their private practice into the clinical trials. So those are some of the differences. The academic institutions obviously are a lot larger. That doesn't mean they won't try to make you feel at home and feel comfortable. It just means that they probably have a lot of staff, and it's just definitely different than doing it at a smaller, privately run research clinic. Some of the other issues are the IRBs. The academic institutions use local IRBs, and for the most part the privately run research clinics use central IRBs. And that, I know that probably means nothing to you guys out there. One of the big differences is probably the fact that at private research clinics, they're more lenient in terms of how much they can compensate you, how much they can reimburse you for your driving, your mileage, parking, things like that. They may have more room to work with than at an academic institution where the IRBs are known to be a little more strict. Sometimes they don't compensate anything. That's not always the case, but very often that is the case. And so the biggest difference, I would say, is number one, the academic institutions, they have federal funds, and the private practice, smaller physician-run clinics are funded by pharma. So what that means is, these academic institutions, they get a budget, and then they have quotas where they have to enroll a certain amount of people. Once they reach that quota, they don't necessarily want to increase their enrollment. Now that's not always the case, but very often this is how it works. And the private research industries, they're usually given a cap of the amount of subjects they can enroll in their studies. But if those studies are having issues with enrollment at other clinics, that particular clinic that reached its limit is usually granted the ability to enroll more. So basically, the incentive for the private, smaller research clinics to enroll you into their studies is probably a little bit higher. Therefore, you'll probably see some community outreach people, you'll see ads on TV. But you might see that in the academic institutions as well. So there's a lot of similarities, but there are also a lot of differences. And the academic institutions, they may have more studies to choose from, and they may have more specific, more niche type of studies, especially for rare medical conditions and disorders. The private research clinics, the benefits are you probably get a chance to know all the staff members and things like that because they're smaller. You may be able to get compensated a little bit more, and but as far as those rare indications, unless you find a private research clinic that specializes in those, you're probably going to be sent to an academic research clinic. Hopefully this helps. If any of you out there work in one of these type of clinics or have done studies at one of these type of clinics, let us know what your experiences are and we'll share them with everyone else. Hopefully this helps. This is Dan signing off, www.theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Thanks a lot.